But with change comes stress, and a lot of stress at the moment. And I may be smiling, but yep, I'm feeling the stress too. But stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension that results from adverse or demanding circumstances. And I think we've got those adverse and demanding circumstances in bucket loads at the moment. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about stress, because a lot of us think of, stress as being something that, we're tearing our hair out, it's really difficult, but stress is also something good. So this is the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve, and basically what it does, it checks performance. So how do we perform and how do we function in relation to stress that's applied to us? So over here we've got, if our performance is pretty low if we don't have a lot of stress applied. But then we move into, if you've ever had that feeling where you're firing on all cylinders, then this is where we're heading to peak performance. And if I think back to maybe 6 weeks ago, a lot of us probably were doing that. We were refreshed after Christmas. We're all, tackling new projects, new opportunities, and really sitting up here almost at peak performance. But then the thing about stress is that we cope really well with stress until we don't. And there's a tipping point where we tip over and we can likely fall into fatigue, which people who speak about change talk about change fatigue, but also then that can slip into exhaustion, panic, anxiety, anger, and then burnout and breakdown. So for me, just on a personal note, I have suffered with anxiety and depression since I was a teenager. So I've gotten used to ups and downs throughout my life. But in 2016, I really was what is considered to be high functioning anxiety. So I was up here at this real tip point where I was performing on all cylinders, but I didn't realize that I was starting to go down this slippery slope towards burnout. And I couldn't see it, because once you move over into the tipping point, you actually then start to feel fatigued, but your decision making, your planning ability, your world starts to get a lot smaller and you actually collapse in on yourself. You stop reaching out to people, you get exhausted, so you're either spending a lot of time sleeping or not sleeping. I did suffer with panic attacks, which was one of the main reasons I ended up going to my doctor. But I ultimately ended up having a total burnout and breakdown, and ended up right down here in this red zone that I know somewhat correlates to what Graham was sharing with us earlier. But it takes a long time to build yourself back up that steep hill to get back into this really optimal stress level where you're firing on all cylinders. For me, it started with a conversation that I had with a friend, a conversation I had with my husband, with my doctor, with my HR professionals at work, and with my manager. And little by little, more and more conversations, more and more building my own resilience, I started to bring myself back up. And when I came through that, I started looking at, okay, I've learned and I have lived in this zone of being firing on all cylinders, but I've also been down here at burnout and breakdown. So what have I learned? And one of the biggest things that I learned is that there is a danger zone that we approach. So as we are firing on all cylinders and we think we are going great guns, all of a sudden we're starting to get fatigued, but there's just one more project, one more meeting, one more initiative that we just have to do. And we push and push and push until we start going over the hill. So understanding here in this danger zone, what are some of those things for you that when you're starting to get stressed, overly stressed, and getting into that fatigued area, what are some of the things you do? For me, I started isolating. I stopped connecting with my friends. I stopped having lunch out with friends. I kept having it at my desk. I literally was closing in on myself, spending way too many hours in the office, and just really not coping well. My exercise stopped, my my ability to be an effective parent was severely diminished. My ability to make good decisions at work was starting to be diminished as well. So understand for yourself and take a little bit of time to think about what are some of those triggers that might happen for you. So if you take a little bit of time today, bearing in mind everything that's going on, where would you plot yourself on this curve? Are you here in the optimal zone? Are you tipping over here into fatigue? Maybe you are someone who was fatigued already and you're moving a little bit further down. But my overall learning on this was about taking personal responsibility for my mental health and well-being. So I make sure that I put myself first.